Well, hello there, Mark Butler.
Hi, Aaron.
So this is where we pretend that we weren't just talking for 10 minutes and catching
Right.
up on all the things.
Yeah.
And then we
Imagine meeting
pretend we
you
just,
here.
oh, this is amazing. Like, wow, this is fantastic. I'm wearing my glasses today because I famously with your branding, your glasses are on there as well, which I love. And I wanted to be one of the cool kids. So I wore
I
my glasses
love
today
these
too.
glasses on you, by the way. This is a fantastic look, in my
This is
opinion.
this is my slight head tilt nod to like I wish that I had a 70s Starsky and Hutch kind of thing going on. Kind of the aviator 70s cool guy thing.
The
We'll
the
see.
the
But I
aviators
got them.
are
I
not.
bought them at Costco, so that kind of takes away
Oh, you
the
can't tell
cool
people that.
factor.
Yeah, for sure. You can't. You cannot
Okay,
tell
well,
people they were purchased at Costco.
I'll edit that out afterwards then in
Be like,
post.
oh,
Okay,
there was
cool.
this little shop on the beach in California, little out of the way
Yeah, that's
place. Nobody knows
that's
about
a
it. You have to know somebody.
that's a way better story. I like that one a lot. So as you can tell, Mark and I don't know each other at all, and this is the first time we've ever talked, and we don't like each other even a little bit. I met Mark. So I first met you when I was going through a coach certification training
As was
at
I.
the Life Coach School. Yeah, you were doing it at the same time. We were in the same group, and with Molly Claire, and we were the only two dudes in the room, if I'm remembering correctly.
Hmm.
And I very quickly went, this seems like a really cool guy. He knows a lot about money, it seems like. And I would like to talk to him more after this. And we, went through all of that stuff. We ended up getting into all kinds of stuff, talking about emotions and all the coaching stuff that people probably think when they go through a coach training. That's what happened there, of course. But as I got to know you more, I got really intrigued about the fact that you had worked in another industry and weren't specifically, you didn't like go to school to become an accountant. You didn't
Yeah. No.
major in finance and get a doctorate in it or something like that. But
Yeah.
it fascinated you about how people treated money and their thoughts around it. And I'm guessing that had a little bit to do with where you worked for a while at YNAB, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I've always been I think I've always been interested in both sort of psychology topics and money topics. And
Mm.
um, when I went to work at You Need a Budget in 2013, that kind of gave me a chance to w- work at the intersection of those topics, the intersection of psychology, thoughts, feelings stuff, habit stuff with money stuff.
What did you unearth for yourself around that? And then start to go like, oh, maybe I'm not the only one that has certain thoughts about this. Did you find any specific things that you worked on as far as your mindset towards money and then you were like I want to tell other people about this, or did it come about a different way?
No, that's how it came about exactly. So when I went to work at YNAB in 2013, I was there as the staff writer, like the staff blogger.
Mm.
So basically, my whole job description for a year was to post something on the blog every day. And my very good friend, who's the founder of You Need a Budget, he really gave me a long, long leash as to what I wrote about. So I just decided to follow sort of the classic blogging trope of sort of my journey. And I had been very good friends with him for years, so I was very familiar with his philosophy and also his software, but I had never really engaged with it. When I went to work for him, I was simultaneously being paid to engage with it, but also at kind of an all-time low as it related to my confidence around money because
Oh, interesting.
I had just sold a couple of businesses, which sounds
Hmm.
amazing. That sentence sounds great in my ears, but it was me sort of limping away from these businesses. The sale prices of these businesses was not nothing, but I just sort of limped away from the whole experience with, some personal debt. I owed the IRS
Mm.
money, and I was just thinking, what is wrong with me? I can't get any of this sorted out. And so I used the opportunity of working at You Need a Budget and writing about their software and their philosophy every day. And the easiest material I had at my fingertips was just my story. I
Oh
didn't have
yeah.
to make anything up. And I'm a person who's relatively comfortable in transparency. So, I would just sort of be in the process and then write about it every day. And it uncovered some things for me, like I historically have been extremely avoidant with money. I didn't want to engage with money because I didn't want to feel restricted by my financial awareness. There's a lot of irony there, by the way. So I thought if I know more about my money, I will feel less free to do things.
Oh, that's so
Um,
fascinating. Yeah, I've definitely had those thoughts too. Like if I just don't know exactly how much is in the bank, I can pretend that everything's fine.
yeah, I can pretend that everything's fine and I can perpetuate this thing that I do. And I still, 10 years later, these patterns are present. I'm just
Mm.
more aware of them and I have better tools for dealing with them. So, very avoidant and not wanting to acknowledge today's facts because I don't want today's facts to get in the way of today's daydreams and sort of like, and perpetually in a state of like, that's fine. I'll deal with it later. I can pay that back or I can work that out later. Perpetually in that state, working there and writing about it every day brought that to the surface. And that's probably if we're talking about an idea like money stories, that was probably my dominant money story, along with the story that I had that I'm quote unquote bad at money.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to talk more about that because I feel like I thought that that was just a personal thing that I had and that, maybe some imposter syndrome being around other entrepreneurs, other business leaders as well that maybe
Yeah.
are in huge corporate environments, but it's more common than you'd think, isn't it?
Oh,
I'm bad with money, and other people
it's,
conversely are really good with it.
I mean, it's close to universal. And I
Interesting.
think there's a lot going on there culturally. Um, the education system here in the States doesn't do much with money, certainly nothing with money mindset.
Hmm.
And yeah, so we become convinced that we're quote unquote bad with money, and believing we're bad with money then obviously impacts our handling of money, which then becomes self-fulfilling prophecy
Mm.
and then cycles.
Yeah,
And
and then you never
doesn't
really get out of it, right? Because there's embarrassment attached to it, and you don't talk about it
Yeah,
with other
because if I
people because
have
there's that kind of everything's fine here. We're doing a really good job here, business wise, household wise, with your neighbors, like that whole mindset.
Yeah, so what we do is we lean on visible anchors. So we pick sort of mental and emotional anchors where we say, if that is true, then it means I'm okay, and it protects us from having to deal with more detailed facts and realities. So and yeah, everyone does this. I mean, since 2013, I think it's safe to say that I've had a couple of thousand conversations with people about their money. I'm not sure. I should actually add it up, and I think I could, but it's definitely a ton of conversations with people about their money. And the number of people who would say the phrase "I'm good with my money," it I mean, it's barely a rounding error in the
Mm.
across those conversations. So it's near universal.
Have there been some other common, with especially with all those different conversations that you've had, other than I'm bad with money? Are there some other common threads that you see that you help your clients with as far as exploring, like maybe that's true, maybe that's not true? Any other patterns that you've noticed after working with that many people about money stories?
Yeah, the idea that money is safety and money is status.
Mm.
And I think you could say that the status thing is sort of an extension of the safety thing, because I think humans pursue status because it's sort of a self-protection thing where we don't want to be rejected by the crowd or by the tribe. So we pursue social status as a way of self-preservation. And then money becomes
Mm.
one of the tools we use for that. So
Yeah.
money becomes both safety and status. And I don't think it's either. And I don't think it's very helpful to view money through either lens.
Hmm.
Money just is. Money is it's a means of exchange.
I remember when we were working together, especially at first too, definitely that first topic we talked about, that I'm bad with money, was one that uncovered fairly quickly. And you must have been like, yeah, uh-huh. I'm used to seeing this with most of my clients.
Hmm.
But then even from there, when you were working with me, it was amazing to me how valuable it was to have a coach that was just like looking at my balance sheet, seeing what was coming in, what was going out, and remain, no matter what it said, remaining very neutral about it.
Yeah.
Like I, because when you first start working with, I mean, other people might call them money managers or CFOs or an accountant or a bookkeeper. There's like, oh no, I'm being found out. Like is a
Yes.
knee jerk emotion. I think that maybe other people have as well, but that it's actually, once you start doing it, like, oh, it's just, it literally, like Mark says, it's just numbers. And sometimes
Yes.
they go up and sometimes they go down and sometimes they stay the same. And like, it doesn't mean anything about me as a person.
No, and it is information. It is information that you can use if you put it in context. You get important information from the numbers on the computer screen, but the information you don't get is whether or not you're a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And asking the numbers to give you that information is always a recipe for disaster. No
Yeah.
exceptions. So, and you're right. That's I take pride in that, and I didn't know at the beginning of my business that that was going to be one of the defining benefits of my business, because I wasn't always like that. By the way, I used to, in the earliest days of my business, where I was advising people sort of on budgeting and cash flow, I was very much caught up in making the numbers mean success, failure, or safety, or and I was losing sleep. I was actually laying in bed at night staring at the ceiling, worrying about a particular client's checking account balance.
Wow. Yeah. You were taking on some of their anxiety, like preemptively.
Completely.
Mm.
And when you say it out loud, you realize, well, that's obviously a disaster. But it wasn't obviously a disaster in the moment. I had decided that my job was to control my clients' behavior with their money, which is
Oh,
hysterical.
interesting.
Like,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
though that were ever going to work. I think a lot of accounting money professionals do that, by the way. Those that work inside companies, those that work in a consulting or a coaching basis, I think they're basically saying my job is to control my client's behavior. And that's so
Mm.
silly. But eventually I realized the single biggest thing I realized was that my clients and I were making the numbers on the screen mean different things. So I could have one client who's consistently overdrawing her checking account and incurring overdraft fees, and she could view that as normal and fine when I'm losing sleep over it, but she could be like, oh, yeah, okay, no problem. And then I could have another client who had 100,000 or $1 million in her checking account, and she could be saying, I just don't feel safe until that balance is higher.
So interesting
So I
how,
got to see both of those, and
yeah.
eventually I had to admit to myself, I guess the numbers on the computer screen are not the determining factor in the person's emotional state. I guess it has to be something else. And once I got there, then you saw neutral mark appear. And that by
Mm.
the time you and I were working together, neutral mark was fully entrenched. I was just like, yeah, I don't, it's just numbers on a computer screen. We can draw information from it, but we're going to try to get very specific kinds of information from it, and none of them are value judgments of you or of the business or anything like that.
I think that's such a good point for everyone to listen to right now. And it doesn't matter if you are supposedly an expert in that area or if you're working at a large corporation where you're working with cost centers that are millions upon millions of dollars, or if you are a solo entrepreneur and you're just
Yeah.
starting your first business. Like, these thoughts about money and about being good at it or not being good at it, or putting value judgments on yourself, whether what that balance is and how much perceived safety you have, like that barometer moves up and down a little bit with individual people, but there's so much crossover. And you
Oh yeah.
shouldn't feel embarrassed or humiliated or like you need to hide those thoughts if you're working with a good uh, person that is helping with money, whether that's a bookkeeper or the term that, I became familiar with, we were mentioning this before we started the call a little bit, was virtual CFO. And I know that you've kind of evolved past even that at this point, but at the time that was such an interesting thing that I hadn't seen before. It was
Mm.
like there were CFOs at, what I would consider real companies,
Yep.
but that an entrepreneur or that even a small business owner, let's say that they had, 50 employees or less, didn't have that C-suite title of a CFO. Maybe they
Yeah.
had a bookkeeper, an accountant.
Yeah.
And that was so helpful to know that that even was available or that was out there, that it wasn't
Yeah.
someone that was just like, yes, it balances out, or I need these receipts because it's not balancing right now, but that it was more of an advisory position
Yeah.
to help you be strategic about not only what's happening right now, but also what do you want to do? What do you want the money to do for you that you have available to you? If you need to go get that money, what does that look like? Someone to really be almost a conspirator with you
Mhm.
in your business, to say like, what
Yeah.
do you want it to be? What do you want the result to be? How, and then offering you different scenarios that could play out in order to get you there. Um,
That's what I've loved to be for my clients, is that co-conspirator, that thought partner, where once, if I can set an example of neutrality and if I can model that for my clients, then that makes it so, there's kind of fertile soil for creative problem solving, innovation in the business. If they can unload some of the unproductive, unnecessary money anxiety, then we can actually get to more productive thinking. And I think whether it's somebody who works on a consulting basis like I have, or it is the kind of person you mentioned earlier, who's the CFO in a big company or a medium-sized company, something I would say to anybody in those kinds of roles is that your background may have fooled you into thinking that your job is to control. In fact, in the
mm,
accounting world, there's literally a title of controller.
controller. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and that is your job, is to sort of be aware of
Fascinating.
expenses and raise awareness of that and keep expenses, down. And that's a real and a valuable function within a company. What you have to understand is, even in that context, you are in a human role and a coaching role, regardless of whether you're employed or you're a consultant, because it's human beings that are making spending decisions, and just shoving spreadsheets in their faces doesn't do anything except make them want to avoid you.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so
So
true.
you have to view yourself as a person with a particular technical expertise. But I think to be happier in your job and to add more value in your job, you have to recognize that bringing technical expertise and combining it with a coaching attitude um, is going to go a lot farther.
Hmm. So if you are leading in one of those roles, like that is a better way to actually get some of the results that you want,
Totally.
instead of, like you said, just showing them the scary spreadsheet
Yeah.
and making them feel like they're in trouble,
All
if
the
they
time.
even understand it in the first place, because they're
Yeah.
not from
Yeah.
your
You're going to
world.
shove a wall of numbers in their face. Then you're going to point to one number on that spreadsheet. And the implication will be, because this number exists, you are bad or you are failing. Yeah. They're going to find a reason to miss the next meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're going to send a
Which isn't productive.
subordinate. They're going to,
It doesn't get the result that you want
no.
for that number to change in some way, or for the health of the company to get better, or for you to be able to put aside a certain amount of money to go after marketing goals. Like,
Yep.
it doesn't get you there if people are scared to even address the topic.
That's it.
Yeah. So what, like, if I, let's say that I am in this place where I am a leader in my company, I'm leading a small team. I have a feeling that maybe I have some money issues that I might want to work on. Like, are there any warning signs, or do you have any recommendations for how I could identify some of those unproductive thoughts and maybe start to move forward in some way? Is there something that you usually recommend in that area?
Yeah. Look, I mean, depending on the person in the company, the idea I'm about to present will either be received enthusiastically or with some skepticism, or rejected wholesale. And the idea is that your emotional state is the most important signal. And so if you're a person who, when you notice that it's time to deal with numbers, to look at numbers, even to think about numbers, if you notice a big change in your emotional state, that's a signal.
Mm,
So if you're going to fear or anxiety or defensiveness or resentment or anger, if those things are bubbling up for you, defensiveness, don't know if I said that, if those things are bubbling up for you anytime it's time to look at numbers or talk about numbers, that emotion, that set of emotions is a signal that something is happening upstream, and the upstream thing is almost definitely a belief, a set of thoughts, and that there's
Like I'm bad with money. Yeah.
like I'm bad with money. Or and it's funny, money can be such a useful catalyst because it is in our culture, it has so much baggage. Like we've given money such huge jobs in our culture, the jobs of validating us, making us safe, like we talked about earlier, that
Status. Yep.
when you look at money, it can be a great catalyst for self-discovery, because you may be looking at a spreadsheet, you may be looking at a budget, you may be looking at a bank balance, and then you'll notice thoughts popping into your head, like defensive thoughts, like, well, what am I supposed to do? They're not giving me the tools I need, or I don't know how I'm supposed to succeed here. He hates me or she hates me. Like
Mm.
totally seemingly random thoughts will start to pop into your head that don't factually relate to the number that you're currently looking at. But numbers can be so emotional for us that they can
Yeah.
reveal thinking in a variety of contexts. So it can be a great tool in that way. But yes, the biggest thing it does is it reveals it reveals thoughts that we're having, especially persistent thoughts that we're having, and it gives us a chance to analyze those thoughts. The big insight, the one that I would hope I could get people to adopt, is that those things are not coming from the numbers themselves. It's actually coming from a recording that plays in your head.
I just think it's so valuable for there to be this new breed of coach and financial advisor, and whatever that label of person that advises you on your finances is, whether it's virtual CFO or whether it's accountant or whether it's a bookkeeper or whether it's a coach, like whatever it is, to be able to know that there are two different things going on there. There is the number, which I can't think of anything that could be more scientific and neutral. It is literally just a number, whether it has
Mm-hmm.
a minus in front of it or it's positive.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but from there, it's all our thoughts. It's all about the value we're attaching to it and what we're making it mean about us and how good of a job or bad of a job we're doing, whether or not that other leader is giving us enough of it so that we can achieve the thing that we're supposed to be doing. Like it all is other thoughts and this pressure that we're putting on ourselves to make it mean other things. And
Yeah.
it's been so valuable for me to be able to work with people like you who can stay neutral in certain circumstances about it, about, what it is and, where it is right now, what the reality is right now, and then what it could be by helping you, coach through your own thoughts as far as if you are having those thoughts like I'm bad with money or this is other people's fault or whatever it is, to get you to the other side of that so that you can feel better and
Yeah.
not want to hide from the numbers, because in the end you're hiding from your business and its growth and the results that you want to get if you're doing that.
Yeah, because as we said earlier, there is information in those numbers, but you so often don't get to the information because you can't get past the judgments,
Oh, so good.
right?
So good.
And so working with a coach or just practicing your own sort of meditations or affirmations or whatever way you get yourself to some amount of neutrality about the numbers and what they mean about you, then you're getting to the opportunity to actually extract meaningful information in the form of ratios, sort of this number used to be that, now it's this, or here's how these two numbers potentially relate to each other. And now you're becoming an observer. You're taking a more curious and scientific approach to the numbers, and
Mm,
then they can become very powerful in your business. And it's the same thing in your personal life, obviously. But you've got to get past the judgments to get to the information.
yeah, especially what we make it mean to us, of how moral or unmoral of a person we are.
That's right.
I've definitely done that to myself,
We
probably
do it.
in sessions with you.
Oh, I mean, I can't remember examples, but you're human. You get to be human. So yeah, you definitely did. And I have.
Mhm.
There's a thing in our culture where we really like to moralize money. And there are people like Dave Ramsey, who I think has done an enormous amount of good in the world. And I wish there wasn't quite so much moralizing around money, where we're
Yeah.
sort of saying, well, yeah, I mean, the bottom line is you're a good person if you have no debt, and you're kind of not a good person if you have debt.
Hmm.
I don't want, I think debt can have negative consequences in a person's life, but I do not sort people into good versus bad piles based on their balance sheet. I don't think that's productive. So I'm no more going to celebrate a person with no debt than I'm going to criticize someone with debt. Neither one of those resonates with me at all.
Yeah, that's something to definitely be mindful of. I think that maybe I have had those moments as well where I can be judgmental about how good someone is about handling with money because of a specific situation that they're in. That I know nothing about the mitigating factors of how they got there or why that should be good or that should be bad. Again, it's just numbers.
Yeah.
How we've talked a little bit about, from my perspective, obviously, and leaders, how their mindset might be affecting their relationship with money or kind of the way that they're leading their business. Do you think it's important for leaders to be aware on some level of the teams that they lead and the money stories that they have, especially if they are working and operating different budgets in the company?
The money stories that team members have.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's any value there of being aware of or giving them that tool set as well,
Well,
of their money stories.
I would say yes. And I would say a sort of a careful, thoughtful yes, meaning if you have a team member whose job it is to present, especially if their job is to present you with financial information, which I'd say most, in most functional teams in a company, there are going to be metrics.
Hmm.
Some may be more like marketing metrics and some may be more like financial metrics.
Or
And,
sales. Yeah.
yeah, those sorts of things. If I have a sense of that person's default programming as it relates to numbers in general and money specifically, it will help me it'll help me make better use of the information they provide. We're always interpreting the information that we get, whether we're getting it from a spreadsheet or we're getting it from a person. And if I know that a person is, for example, extremely anxious and fearful, then I can use that as context when they're presenting with me information. I don't want to be unfairly judging them. There's risk. This is
Mm.
the fine line we might be walking here. But if I have a person who struggles with pessimism or cynicism or just plain old fear, I'm going to look at the numbers they present and the way they present them differently. So that one of the problems with us all thinking um, that numbers have intrinsic meaning is that we can then lose sight of the fact that all numbers are interpreted numbers. We never are looking at a number without interpreting it. And if someone else is presenting it, we're consuming not so much the number as their interpretation of the number. And so we would want to have clarity in that relationship around the person could even have self-awareness and be like, look, I'm the one who operates with a little bit of fear. Like I struggle with a little bit of a doomsday attitude. And yes, that's
Hmm.
probably coloring my presentation of these numbers. And you can have the other end of the spectrum as well. A person saying, yeah, like we all know I'm the incurable optimist, sometimes to the point of being naive. And so, yes, that's also making its way into my presentation of the numbers. And so, as a team, you're sort of balancing each other's default settings as it relates to those numbers, because it's never a factual, in the purest sense, presentation, is it? It can't be, because humans don't do that.
Yeah, we always have our own baggage of judgments and things that we come to the table with as well. So
Yeah.
maybe
So
even just teaching that awareness.
yeah, it's like we have to have conversations around the numbers, and then we also have to have sort of vulnerable, maybe too strong a word, but we need to have honest conversations with each other about how we tend to interpret numbers. That's part of our
Hmm.
team culture and how we function.
If I'm a leader or if I'm a business owner or maybe even a team member and just, or in my personal life, I want to get better about how I feel about money. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, some of the stuff that Mark and Aaron have been talking about is resonating a little bit right now. I would like to feel better about this, or at least explore if I have some of these stories and how to work on them. Is there something that you would recommend as far as a friend or anything? Is there a place for people to start that journey? Um, like whether with you or with someone else, or books that you recommend, like where would you recommend somebody start with they wanted to start working with a coach or working on this in some facet?
I do obviously believe in coaching. I mean, as we record this, I'm currently working with two coaches and a therapist, which I think sounds hilarious when
Hmm.
you say it out loud. But I kind of revel in it. I mean, each of these people has a
Yeah.
different role in my life, and I value them so much. So yes, I'm always going to say, consider working with a coach. When it comes to money, you want, as you talk to potential coaches, if you know that your challenges with money are more emotional than kind of procedural, meaning you're not looking for a specific set of tactics, you know that you're looking for a new paradigm. Then, when you're talking with coaches, making sure you're talking with a coach whose job is paradigm shifting, not like procedural implementation stuff. Because there's both kinds
Hmm.
of coaches and they both do a lot of good work in the world. If you're working through this on your own, which you can absolutely do, I would encourage exposure therapy, meaning just start looking at your numbers and start practicing a neutral view of the numbers. Start practicing some thoughts that disconnect the number from your self image,
Mm,
and do it
that's so
gently,
good.
do it patiently. Open up your checking account. And then you could even have sort of a little mantra. You can open up the checking account, you can see the number, and then you could, I don't know, you could say it's just a number on a computer screen, or
Yep.
sort of my money is not my value. People have different levels of comfort with things like affirmations or mantras. Do what feels comfortable to you, but I really believe in some exposure therapy. When I was working at You Need a Budget, and I was highly avoidant, and I was very discouraged and self-critical of how I'd interacted with money throughout my whole adulthood. I practice exposure therapy by getting into my money every single day and practicing curiosity.
Mm.
And I did that for probably 6 or 8 months, where
Instead of judgment.
I was in my money every day, getting curious about this expense, getting curious about that habit, wondering what my alternatives would be, and just spending time with myself in the context of the money, going to curiosity and compassion instead of criticism.
And judgment. I love that. If what kind of, I mean, I know that we talked about this a little bit before we started recording. You've moved on to kind of changing your business model a little bit about who you work with and things like that. Where are you going right now? Because like I said, when I first started working with you, you were kind of on that bleeding edge of the virtual CFO and kind of what that meant and what kind of services those included and things like that, and that
Mhm.
coaching hybrid. Where are you going now? What kind of clients are you loving to work with now?
I have a bookkeeping service called Let's Do the Books. It is geared toward coaches and consultants, and that's great. That's a done for you sort of accounting service that makes sure you have the reports you need for taxes when you need them. There's not really a coaching component to that. My coaching has evolved more toward general coaching, where in one call I am part of a marketing strategy conversation with a client, and in the next call I'm talking with a client about their frustrations in their marriage. And I think that evolution
Mm.
came in part from my realization that there actually are no money problems. There are relationship problems, there are thought problems, there are emotional problems. Money ends up being the thing that reveals the challenges, but the
Oh
money
wow,
itself
yeah,
is never the challenge. For a while, I was teaching a
because it's just a
class.
number.
It's just a number. So for a while, I was teaching a class called Money School. I taught it before. I'm going to teach it again starting in January. And as I worked with some couples in that context, I really cemented my own belief that there are no money problems, and that everything we hear about saying, finances are one of the major causes of divorce. No, finances reveal issues in the marriage that end up being the reason the marriage ends. But money didn't
Oh my
do
gosh.
it.
Yeah,
right? So I stopped.
absolutely.
It sort of took the wind out of my sails to really be a quote unquote money coach. Not that I don't want to help people in that way, but mostly what we do is in fact, I have this experience all the time. People will come to me and say, well, I've got issues with my money. And I always say, I want to meet them where they are. And I say, okay, great. Let's talk about it. And then 10 minutes later, we're talking about, we've long since left money behind. It was sort of like 5 minutes of money talk that revealed this thought, that revealed this, dominant belief, that revealed this relationship issue in a relationship. And money was just the thing that opened the door to the conversation, but the money has nothing to do with it. So I'm doing a lot of what you
It's
and
just
I would
almost an
call
easy scapegoat.
absolutely easy scapegoat. And speaking of an easy scapegoat, in our culture, because our culture has such a strong set of ideas around money, almost no one will challenge you when you say that your problems are financial problems. They will agree with
Because it's
you and they will
safe.
say, I've got those same problems. But then if you're able to work with a coach who's able to have some distance from the thing and say, well, actually, I don't know that that's actually a money problem. It's the evidence, by the way, is I have plenty of experiences now where the money situation changes completely, but the dominant thoughts and feelings are still as strong or stronger than they ever were. And
So you
so
have proof.
I think I have proof. I don't know that everybody agrees with me that it's proof,
Yeah.
but I'm treating it as proof. That when somebody is making millions of dollars per year, and I have real examples of this, when somebody's making millions of dollars per year, but I see them as anxious, as fearful, as obsessed with external validation as they were when they were making hundreds of thousands per year. Well, for me at that point, I feel comfortable leaving money out of the conversation because the money situation changed
Mm.
so dramatically, but the mental and emotional state changed or stayed the same or got worse.
I love this this line of thinking that money, it's not the money itself, it's what the money is revealing, that we're allowing it to reveal about our relationships, about our own self-worth thoughts, about so many different things. It's not actually the money, but it's almost safe to use it because everyone has to interact with it. It's almost like a buffer to us addressing maybe the thoughts and the desires and the what we making it mean about us, depending on
Yeah.
what that number is. So
Yeah.
so good, whether it's in our business or in our personal checking account. I
Yeah.
love it.
It's like a
Love it.
universally accepted buffer between us and our thoughts and feelings.
Oh wow, I'm gonna sit with that one today after we're done talking. So true. Oh my gosh. Mark, this has been so amazing. Thank you so much for sparing the time to talk with us about this. I love how quickly you're able to pivot from just looking at something that is arguably so neutral like money and figure out like where, yeah, but where's that thought coming from? Like, let's go back upstream or let's go
Yeah.
downstream to where you think that's what it's going to mean if that number keeps going down. It's kind of like you're able to move up and down the river using this as a tool. And it's been so cool to see you and where you're going with this. Cause I really think that you are at the front of thought leadership here, where
Mm,
that intersection of money and all these things that we attach to it. And it's not really about the thing we think it is. And maybe
no.
that's a great place for us all to start. But man, if you have a chance to work with Mark, I've worked with him. I currently, my business does work with him with Let's Do the Books. They do a fantastic job. I love not having to think at any given time about the monthly budget and where it's going and the tracking and how easy it is to move everything at the end of the year or to ask for a P&L report and it just automatically happens. And it looks like that I'm super responsible when in the end, I'm really not. I'm just using this amazing service.
You are, though.
Um,
You're responsible in the
See,
job
more
functions.
thoughts.
Totally. You are responsible for the job functions that move the needle in your business. That's what you're doing.
Very true. Yes. See, even right now, he's teaching me. This is great. And so, Mark, if people, I know that, like we said, you're off and you're kind of pushing the envelope in different directions about the intersection of money and thoughts and people's self-worth and how they can evolve. But where can they find out more about you right now if they wanted to listen to more of your thoughts and follow you a bit more about kind of where you're going with this stuff?
I write a weekly newsletter about money. that people can opt into at moneyschool.works. And I send an email every Thursday night with this flavor of idea, the kind of thing that Aaron and I have been talking about today. Moneyschool.works. And then I have a podcast with my very good friend, Jesse Meekum, who's the founder of You Need a Budget. The podcast is called Beginning Balance. Talk a lot about money topics, psychological topics, and also leadership topics on Beginning Balance. So you can get that podcast wherever podcasts are streamed.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Mark, thank you again so much for your time today. I know this has been really helpful for me. Really secretly, everyone, I just had him on so that I could get a free coaching session because he's really booked up right now. So
nice,
this
man.
just really helped me with everything I'm working on. All right, my friend. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic week.
Likewise.